What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to my part 2 of my deep dive into the book Limitless Mind by the author Russell Targ. And yes, this book is about remote viewing. So the first video was basically an introduction, preparing you guys for what this book entails. Let's go ahead and start talking about chapter 1, which is living in a non-local universe. So we live in a non-local reality, which basically means we can be affected by events that are distant from our ordinary awareness. Now, there is an example of this non-locality in this study that was done on these identical twins that were separated at birth. They had striking similarities with their taste, interests, spouses, experiences, and professions. This one famous pair of twins were both named Jim by their adoptive parents. Although they never communicated, they both married a woman named Betty, divorced her, and then married a woman named Linda, both of them. They both were firemen, and each of them had a compulsion to build a white bench encircling a tree in their backyard. Now, there may be fireman genes, music genes. I do not believe there are Betty genes, Linda genes, white circular bench genes. The author believes that this was a non-local telepathic connection between the twins. Inexplicable, but real. These are the actual twins right here, Jim Lewis and Jim Springer. Separated at birth, but lived wildly parallel lives. Data from dream research also provides convincing evidence that we have access to events occurring in distant places. This was demonstrated with J.W. Dune's An Experiment with Time, in which he recorded, verified, and published precognitive dreams. Space and time are nothing but modes of human perception. These modes are powerful filters of our own invention and often serve to limit our experiences. So anyway, this author said, based on his research conducted in his laboratory, that remote viewers can focus attention at a specific location anywhere on the planet or off of it, and often describe what is there. The experiments show that the viewer is not bound by present time. So in contemporary physics, they call this ability to focus attention on distant points in space-time, they call it non-local awareness. Data from the past 25 years have showed that remote viewers can answer any question about the past, present, or future and be correct more than 2/3 of the time. But for an experienced viewer, the rate of correct answers can be much higher. All right, so at this point, we know the phenomena of remote viewing exists. It's real. But how does it work? So data from more than 100 years of PSI research, PSI means parapsychology, which is basically psychic or paranormal phenomena. Years of PSI research show that there is no significant decline in the accuracy of any kind of ESP. ESP means extrasensory perception, with increasing distance between the viewer and the target being viewed. Basically, that just means whatever the distance, no matter how big it is between the viewer and what is being viewed, the accuracy of what is being viewed does not decline. The author also states that it is no more difficult to look into a short distance into the future than to describe a present time hidden target. The author also concluded that it is very unlikely that an electromagnetic field is involved in carrying this PSI signal. An electromagnetic signal decreases the farther away it is from the source. The radio signal you would receive if you were 10 miles from the transmitter would be 100 times weaker than the signal you would receive being a mile away. Yet, you don't see the slightest evidence of such a distance-related decrease in PSI abilities. So this woman right here, her name is Mary Craig Sinclair. She attempted to duplicate 290 pictures which were drawn by her brother. Her husband claimed that she successfully duplicated 65 of them with 155 partial successes and 70 failures. But this was her experiment to prove her telepathic abilities, which I think is pretty impressive. Instead of signals being sent out, that data that she provided suggested that the desired information is always present and available. When it comes to remote viewing, the viewer's focused intention calls forth the information they desire. Remote viewers are basically just messengers. They translate impressions of the information they receive into drawings and verbal concepts that we can understand what they are seeing. Spiritual healing introduces a whole nother element in which the healer acts as a conduit of healing information to the patient, which directly stimulates the patient's cells to reorganize themselves into a healthy pattern. So this is a revered Jewish theologian. His name is Rabbi Lawrence Kushner, and he said that human beings are joined to one another and to all of creation. coming into being, growing to maturity, procreating, dying without even the faintest awareness of our indispensable and vital function within the greater body. All creation is one person, one being, whose cells are all connected to one another within a medium called the consciousness. And he is absolutely correct. You don't need to read it in a book to know that. You just take the time to sit there and meditate. Through meditation, one experiences the insight that one is not a body, rather, one has a body. Hinduism even teaches that individual consciousness and universal consciousness are one and the same. During this lifetime, we have the opportunity to experience a self, but that is not who we are. The self or ego is just a fixation of the past. It is a conditioned existence, basically exactly what we are not. We live in a trance-like attachment to our story of who we think we are. For example, business cards. We put so much attention to it, but it's basically just a story card that we give people to tell them who we think that we are. And if you believe that story, it can cause a lot of suffering. And Buddhism teaches us that the root of our suffering is attachment, is our desires. When you let go of that, you can achieve nirvana. You can achieve liberation, freedom, oneness, love. Okay, so moving on. This right here is Aristotle, and he came up with a two-valued logic, which basically means that any proposition could only have two possible values, true or false. So if we come to the conclusion that we are not a self, nor are we not a self, but rather an awareness residing within a body, then that leaves a paradox when it comes to this two-value logic. Because that is not a yes or no question, and it leaves a lot of confusion. But that's where Nagarjuna comes in. Nagarjuna was a Buddhist philosopher monk who came up with the four-valued logic, in which statements about the world can be true, not true, both true and not true, and neither true nor not true. I know that can be confusing, but rewind if you have to. But the last one that I said, where it is neither true nor not true, is the one that Nagarjuna believed was the usual case. This four-valued logic shows that the so-called problem of mind-body duality is not a paradox after all. This four-value logic basically makes up what non-locality means, because things are neither separate nor not separate. That's deep, y'all. Sit on that one. Okay, so moving on, this right here is a representation of Patanjali, who was a Hindu author, mystic, and philosopher. And he gave step-by-step instructions for what some may call omniscience. Omniscience is the state of knowing everything, kind of like our boy Xavier. So he taught that if one wants to see the reflection of the moon in the water, one must wait until every ripple is still. Of course, it's a metaphor. Achieving omniscience doesn't mean we can know everything. However, by asking one question at a time, we can know anything we need to know. And finally, this is Longchenpa. He was a Tibetan scholar yogi. And he basically taught that we, human beings, need to move away from conditioned awareness and learn to head into the direction of timeless existence. Conditional awareness is the crazy-making process of focusing one's anxious and fearful attention onto the future, which you cannot control, while feeling guilt over the past, which you cannot control anymore, and missing out entirely on the present, which you can control. Okay, you guys, so that basically covered everything in chapter 1. Chapter 2 is where things start getting juicy, but I'm going to save that for another video because it's a lot and I've already dumped a lot on you in this video. So go ahead and leave me a comment. Let me know what you guys think about everything I said in this one, and let me know if you're ready for the next video, chapter 2.